Okay, now we go to the cause and effect diagram, no, yung fishbone diagram. Ulitin ko to, no? It is said to be one of the best tools that help to identify the contributing causes of an issue. And it can be honed further into the root cause most accurately. Kasi remember, if you're familiar with the five whys, we are again getting the through its use, no? Root cause talaga yung makukuha natin. Ganito yung example natin, no? Bakit yung isang estudyante nakakuha ng 95, kunwari ng, failing grade from ah, ah, an exam, 'no? One cause is might probably, walang preparation. Pero hindi kasi yun, tawag dito, main cause, 'no? Puwedeng bakit wala siyang preparation? Dahil kasi possible na marami siyang, gawaing trabaho. Okay, so puwede kasing working student siya. So bakit siya kumukuha ng ano, ng work at nag-aaral, I mean during, his study nag-aaral, nag-aano pa siya, nagwo-work pa siya, mainly because kailangan niya ng pera. Okay, so probably that is the, probably isa yun sa puwedeng root cause, pero puwede pa yan i-elaborate further. Bakit kailangan niya ng pera? Kasi walang magsu-support. Okay, bakit walang magsu-support? Kasi yung magulang niya walang trabaho. That is the root cause of the problem. So ano puwede mo maging, solution over that root cause? Eh, di dapat may trabaho ang parents. Okay, so that is a very practical example of, the cause and effect diagram. You should know the main, I mean the root cause of the problem. Ang ano nito, ang, main, premise or the premise of this, principle is that, you exhaust all the reasons or the main reason bakit may gano'n kang, problem, 'no? And if you identify the root cause of the problem, you should address your solution to the root cause. Hindi sa isang sa unang first cause lang. Ibig sabihin, you just putting just a bandage on the first cause. Ang idea nito dapat kung magpu-put ka ng bandage, dapat sa root cause. Just to close out the next effects of the root cause of the problem. Naintindihan? Okay, so this approach is useful for compliance reviews where operators should do what the contract, law, regulation, or procedures documentation requires. This is very true. No, kasi one of the main problems why hindi tayo efficient or we have this kind of problem is that we are not following most of the what is being required by the tawag dito, yung ating contracts, ating law and regulation. And most likely, based on experience, so one of the root causes is that the person or who is handling the process doesn't have tawag dito, proper training. So ano yung magiging solution natin for that root cause? Provide training to the people. No? Yan lagi yung root cause ng problem natin with most of the deviations na or audit findings na meron tayo. Okay, based on experience yan, laging gano'n, lack of training, 'no, hindi dahil sa incompetency of the people, 'no? Kasi incompetent yung tao dahil wala kang ngang proper training na binibigay sa tao. Kasi yun yung, well, nung bago-bago pa lang ako sa audit, 'no, hindi ko sinasabing ako yung nagsasabi na may incompetent yung tao. Incompetent yung tao in a sense na wala talagang binibigay na training. 'No? I mean, meron talagang basis bakit gano'n yung tao. Hindi mo puwedeng sabihing incompetent yung tao, sadyang kulang lang sa training, okey? Kung kulang man sa training, kung hindi effective ang first training, anong puwedeng maging solution mo for that? Eh, di provide, a more, intensive or extensive training, wherein talagang fully made-develop yung tao. Of course, you hire a people who is qualified to do the work. However, siguro due to its nature na medyo nagbabago yung, requirements of the job, siyempre hindi na nakakapag-keep up yung tao sa demands of the job. So yung magiging, tawag dito, magiging, solution mo to that kind of problem? Eh di provide that, people, um, tawag dito, periodic training. Okay, to keep up with the updates in the profession. Okay, so this approach is also useful for financial reviews where accountants and others involved in record keeping and preparing a financial statement must adhere to the applicable accounting standards. So in here, again, no, identifying the root cause of problem is a constant challenge for internal auditors. This is very true. And one of the best tools is eto, tong cause and effect diagram. It is very important to remember that many of the organizational issues are the product of multiple causes or reason. However, many of the internal auditors, especially those accustomed to performing the said compliance and financial reviews, treat issues from a binary perspective. When you say binary perspective, this is just only cause and effect. So you're only the cause. Dapat it's the root cause of the problem. Okay? This means they use the following process. No, first is identifying what should have been done. Second, verify that what was done is constant with what should have been done. Then third, if yes, report no finding and close the working papers. And if no, kung walang consistency, no, with what should have been done, write a finding and recommend that the practice in the future to be consistent with the guidelines that we have identified that what should have been done. Now, this approach is very useful for compliance reviews where operators should do what the contract, the law, regulation, or the procedure documentation requires. So, yun yung nasabi natin kanina with the compliance review. Now, with the financial review, it is very important for us to be compliant or adhere with applicable accounting standards. Now, we have here the cause and effect diagram and analysis. For the first one, no, cause and effect analysis is valuable tool for number one, no, focusing on causes, not just symptoms. So yun yung sinasabi ko kanina. Hindi lang sa symptom, we are not putting just a bandage sa symptom. The symptom is just an effect of another cause. Okay? Up until ma-exhaust mo yung cause mo at maging root cause of the main problem, then you are doing your analysis right. Okay? In here, we provide a picture of why an effect is happening. Okay? Third, establishing a sound basis for further data gathering and action. Okay? So, since we are doing our analysis very carefully, since we are getting the root cause of the problem, we have now what we call the sound basis in gathering the data and providing the appropriate action. And this analysis can also be used to identify all of the areas that need to be tackled to generate a positive effect. Okay? So, definitely, kung tama talaga yung root cause mo, all of the, tawag dito, areas na na-cover ng root cause, no, pag binigyan mo ng solution yan, definitely, it will have a positive effect. All of the remaining effects of that root cause, definitely, it will be, tawag doon, maku-cure or totally ma-eliminate. Okay? In here, cause and effect diagrams are designed to, number one, also stimulate thinking during a brainstorm of potential causes. It's better that you coordinate with another person to have a brainstorm. No, paano kung walang brain, so it's only storm? Joke lang. Okay. Naku, nagjo-joke si sir. Okay. Wait lang, sorry, natawa ako. Okay. Second, providing a structure to understand the relationship between many, sorry, natawa ako, possible causes of a problem. So, since we are getting the causes, no, it's possible kung hindi pa talaga siya yung pinaka-root cause, you provide here a structure of possible causes of a problem. Okay? So, baka kasi mamaya you identified many causes and then yung sa mga cause na yun, may possible iba pang effect siya. That's a very holistic approach in identifying really the root cause, and you also cover some of the other problems. It also have an effect to other areas. Okay, so third, giving people a framework for planning what data to collect. No, mamaya may papakita ko sa inyong Ishikawa diagram. No, it's a very useful tool for us to really identify kung ano yung root cause also. Okay. Number four, serving as a visual display of causes that have been studied. Okay, so it's a visual display wherein you can use some keywords for you to easily analyze, no? Para siyang flowchart din. Pero, of course, you'll be providing narrative of each of the keyword that you indicated in the diagram. Okay? Fifth, helping team members communicate within the team and with the rest of the organization. So actually, the cause and effect diagram is a common tool. Now, just like with flowchart, now if you want your colleagues within the audit team to understand their analysis, the fishbone map or the cause and effect diagram is a good tool kasi you have the same understanding what the tool means, no? And if you put the causes or the root cause in the fishbone diagram or in the cause and effect diagram, probably um kung tama ang analysis nyo ha, at least yung reader or the users of the diagram will definitely understand the analysis that you made or created. Okay? So first, before I show you the on how to create the cause and effect analysis and diagram, we have to identify the different categories of root cause sources. When searching for the root cause of issues, auditors are effectively searching for the source of variation. So, pwede kasing for easy referencing, no? Madali kung we know what are the possible sources of this or what are the possible root cause sources. So, which are often we group into categories. So we have identified here the 6 categories. So first we have the people. Uh, People in here represents individuals involved in the process. So possible sila ang maging root cause, right? Second, we can also categorize it into methods. When we say methods, these are how the process is performed and the requirements for doing it. This may include what we know, policies, procedures, regulations, laws, and rules. So that's where method comes from. Okay? Next category of root cause sources is also the machines, no? Lalo na kung we are in a manufacturing setup. Any piece of machinery, computers, tools, or equipment required to perform the work. So it's also a possible root cause source. Okay. Then next we have here the materials. These are inputs used to produce the product. This may include raw materials, parts, semi-finished goods, and paper. Okay. So next, what we call measurements. Data used to evaluate the quality of the process may also be a category of root cause sources. Okay. And then the last one, environment. When you say environment, these are conditions in which the process activities are performed. These may include such as time, location, temperature, humidity, noise, and culture. When you say environment, ito yung parang most likely um, well, majority of the root cause of the problems, no? For example, um, in terms of temperature, nasira yung machine, yun yung main cause ng problem niya, the environment. So ano yung pwedeng maging control natin over that? We all know that machine to be efficiently working in a good state, it should have a good working condition through the what we call kinetic. The machine will work definitely na hindi siya mag-overheat kapag nasa air-conditioned room siya. At the same time, ano pang environment? Um, would you expect your people providing service to your audit clients, no, give you a quality output kung sila ay nagwo-work ng graveyard shift, di ba? So, yun. It's also a possible root cause source. Okay? So, the list of typical categories can be longer. So, what we have stated here, no, it can be more than 6. And in some cases, it is categorized based on the type of organization or environment where the effect is being analyzed. This only represents major categories that cause variation, and other categories can be used as well. When preparing a diagram or the cause and effect diagram, the items can be selected from either column. No? The 6 categories recommended will address almost all scenarios. So most likely, ma-address nila lahat yan. However, there is no perfect set of categories. You may need to adapt to suit the issue being analyzed. Okay, so now we've discussed the different categories of root cause sources. So what are the how we should, paano natin ngayon gagawin yung cause and effect analysis and diagram? So we have here identified 7 steps. So first is to definitely, before you perform your cause and effect, identify natin yung problem or yung issue natin. Please make sure that the problem is really specific, and tightly defined, and which will relatively aid us in tawag dito, in getting a smaller scope. And and everyone participating understand exactly what is being analyzed. So since we are doing this possibly with another person, so diba we are doing brainstorming, it will really help if we understand kung ano yung gusto nating malamang problem or issue. A second one is brainstorm. Okay, brainstorm, it is important to do this one before identifying the cause categories. Otherwise, you can constrain the range of ideas. However, if ideas are slow, no, incoming use questions such as what about to prompt thoughts. Okay? So the third one is to draw the fishbone diagram. So kanina pinakita ko sa inyo, 'di ba? Ito 'yon. So yan yung fishbone diagram. Literally para siyang buto ng isda. Okay? So basically, mag-drawing ka muna ng parang arrow diagram going to the right, no? And then doon sa gitna nung parang tip of the bone, no, you draw a horizontal line and extend mo pa dito sa beyond this tip point yung iyong issue or problem. Okay? So yun yung pag-draw natin ng fishbone diagram. And then number 4, align outputs with cost categories. Okay, so kanina na-identify natin yung cost categories, no? Ito 'yon. Then definitely kailangan mong ilagay yan dito. No, bawat line, no, na diagonal, you should put here the source categories na na-identify natin. Okay? And then number 5, to allocate the causes, no? In here, transfer the potential causes from the brainstorm to the diagram. So if you have a brainstorm session, you identified different causes. So plot it in the fishbone map or fishbone diagram, no? Ilalagay natin yan dyan. And dapat, pag naglagay tayo dyan, it should be following a logical process. So, in here, we should use 5 whys. Okay, so identify mo if the the effect here or the item here is the cost of this item. And then the same goes, tong item na to should be the cause of this problem. At the same time, etong isang to, it is also the cause of this problem. So ganun siya. Dapat yung logical flow of putting here the causes that you've identified during your brainstorm session. Okay? And then with number 6, analyze the root cause. No, definitely dapat yung root cause mo, siya yung root cause talaga. Baka mamaya after exhausting all efforts, no, hindi pa talaga siya yung root cause. Baka meron pa. Better to have another person who can analyze your fishbone diagram very well. Kasi baka mamaya meron pa siyang ma-identify na main root cause pa. Okay? And number 7, the last one, test for reality. Test the most likely cause. For example, through data gathering and observation, if this has not already been done. No? A fishbone may be developed for each discrete activity within the process that is generating the output or the effect so that the costs are linked together to particular steps in the process. Okay, so meaning after we have plotted all here the causes and the root cause of the problem, you need to test for the reality, meaning you perform walkthrough. Tingnan mo kung talaga bang yung mga na-identify natin causes is really present in reality. Baka kasi mamaya ano lang siya, theoretical lang, hindi talaga nag-exist. So you perform inquiry, observation, if it really exists. Okay? So ganun ang paggawa natin ng fishbone diagram. This is just not merely brainstorming ideas. Make it to a point that if you have a brainstorm session, it really happen in reality. Okay? So yun yung end result dapat ng ano natin ng cause and effect analysis diagram. Okay? So next we have the next tool which we call the force field analysis. So in here, force field analysis is a management technique developed by Kurt Lewin, a pioneer in the field of social sciences for diagnosing situations. So I think you are very familiar with Kurt Lewin kasi 'di ba um, laging narinig niyo yung pangalan sa management principle, siya ang, tawag dito, ang gumawa ng force field analysis. So in here, internal auditors are tasked with the identification of issues, 'di ba? So katulad nung ginawa natin sa cause and effect diagram, right? Um, and after identifying of course, the issues, no, and we identify the root cause, we should provide recommendation based on the observations that we had, no, yung dun sa test for reality. However, no, the recommendation for corrective action does not always receive a positive reception. So meaning, if we have identified the possible solution to a root cause, dapat we should have another people or an articulation na yung root cause ay yung solution to that root cause would probably have a good views from the stakeholders. So how do we do that? Through force field analysis. In fact, the recommendation sometimes receive a significant amount of pushback by the client. Baka kasi possible yung solution mo, ayaw talaga ng client. There's a better alternative for that solution. Kaya nga sabi nga natin, 'di ba, we use the case study method, no? Kung may mga na-identify kang problems, no, and then you have identified the solution, it is just not enough to have one alternative or one solution lang rather. If possible, no, mag-identify ka ng alternative courses of action. So meaning, more than one, possibly siguro ang pinakamarami mo na dalawa. For field analysis again, no, if ever you have this solution to the root cause of the problem, just what we have discussed in the fishbone diagram. Okay, so ito yon yung root cause of the problem. Possible you have here the category sources of root cause, no? You have identified. And then you have here a solution to that root cause. Ang problem with that, baka hindi kasi receptive ang organization or yung management or even the stakeholders with what you have recommended. So it is good that you have a force field analysis to convince them that your solution is the optimal one that you can provide to them. Kasi pwede kang magkaroon ng ano ng different alternative course of action. So baka kasi tanungin ka, yan na ba yung best na recommendation mo na pwede mong mabigay sa amin to solve that kind of problem? Okay? So, pag nakita nila na meron kang ginawang alternative and based from the alternatives, so you perform force field analysis and kung may and kung ang napili mong optimal solution has this tawag to high score, no, after your analysis, ah mako-convince mo yung stakeholder mo na eto talaga yung optimal solution mo. Okay? So, while this can occur, no, because the auditor did not perform sufficient testing or did not communicate the attributes of the observation sufficiently, siguro hindi siya nag-test ng reality, it can also be due to other reasons. Some of the reasons may be legitimate, such as what happens when the auditor did not fully meet the requirements for effective audit evidence. So in here, if the auditor does not test sufficiently, obtain and review relevant information, or talk to the appropriate individuals, uh, perform procedures that are relevant given the objectives of the review, or show that the work performed helps to support the organization's objectives. So in here, process owners have an understandable reason for pushing back. Okay? So when you say pushback, hindi sila convinced doon sa audit mo. Okay? Other instances of audit's pushback may be merely excuses not to do what should be done. Kaya nga, there's a possibility kasi na parang maganda nga yung ano mo, yung solution mo, and you know for a fact that it is the best solution. Pero if you perform the force field analysis, meaning you identified other alternatives for solving that root cause, eh, may mga na-cross out ka kasi nga hindi siya yung optimal, then you can convince even your audit client that you have the optimal solution, so as to really avoid what we call the pushback, yung hindi sila naniniwala. Pwede kasing paikutin ka lang, na hindi yan yung ano, yung totoong solusyon. Hindi ako naniniwala sa'yo. Kasi may gano'n talagang mga clients. So, in order for you to convince them, perform the force field analysis. Okay? In either case, the outcome is often the same. The auditor attempts to convince the client about the virtues of the recommendation while the client raises objection. Okay? The auditor retorts by re-emphasizing the virtues of the idea while the client continues to repeat and raise objections. Sometimes there is an auditor comment stating something to the effect that despite the client's objection, internal audit remains steadfast in its belief that this is an issue worth addressing. So yun yung sinasabi ko. Kasi kahit gano'n ka-convincing yung solution mo, pero you did not perform the force field analysis, maku-question ka talaga. Kasi hindi sila, like, magpu-pushback talaga sila. Sabihin nila, hindi kami naniniwala sa'yo. Yun yung sinasabi ko kanina. In the end, no, the relationship is, and the relationship is and make a decision that supports one of the disagreeing parties or arrives at a compromise that the auditor and the auditee could not reach on their own. This is not a desirable outcome. To help prevent this scenario, auditors may want to consider using this analysis, no, a management technique that which is developed by Kurt Lewin, okay, and it is very useful, no, to what you call this, resolve conflict of opinions. Kasi possible nga may mga stakeholders ka, hindi sila like unanimous in terms of your recommendation. Okay? Comparing the pros and cons of a decision, no, and to evaluate the strengths and weakness of an idea, product, or a project. Okay? So actually, this is a great decision making tool to identify the forces for and against a course of action. So you have here your solution, and dapat meron kang two opposing views. One is for the forces for or your support for that decision, and one force is against that course of action. So ano yung pros and cons niya? Okay? So this is also a technique to discuss and evaluate the forces that support or hinder a decision. So yun yung pros and cons din. It can also help to strategize the best way to present the information by understanding the big picture and the pros and cons of the recommendation. So ulit-ulit lang ako, no? Lastly, it forces the proposal advocate to walk a mile in the auditee's shoes. Okay? So by understanding the auditor's perspective, the auditor is more aware of the challenges that the client faces and show empathy during the process. So yun yung kagandahan ng force field analysis. Hindi lang tayo parang robot na i-dictate lang natin sa ating audit client na ito po yung recommendation namin. Tapos parang kaya may pushback ang audit client kasi you did not consider other factors. So force field analysis is a very good tool for us to consider or be more considerate or have an empathy to our audit clients that you show that you considered other factors. It's possible that they are having difficulty, no, in having that change. So, anong mga causes nun? So, you can put that as a cons to your proposed solution. And what are the pros? So, you provide the pros and you provide the pros. So, later on, we have the steps, no, in order to do the force field analysis. So, ito na yun, no? These are the necessary steps to create the force field analysis. So, medyo maliit siya, no? So, number one, write a letter T at the top of a piece of paper. Flip chart paper or whiteboard, no? In here, the plan or the proposal can be written above the T, then follow the steps below. An alternate approach is to write a plan or proposal in the middle and place the items to the left and the right of it. Okay? So, ano itsura niya? Ito siya. Sinasabi nating letter T, yung parang T account. It's possible pwede mong ilagay yung iyong solution to your problems above the T or between the opposing forces, the driving forces and the restraining forces. Kumbaga, ito yung equilibrium. Okay? Balik tayo dito, no? So, write the driving forces, no, or forces for, or the enabling forces that support the change initiative on one side of the diagram. So, most likely, this is located in the leftmost portion. Ito. What are the driving forces? So, these are your pros. Ano yung parang pros mo in the issue that you identified or the what do you call this, the solution that you set for that kind of problem. It will really depend, no? Okay. In here for business initiates, no, example may include lower cost, no, faster speed, increased customer satisfaction, fewer errors, and increased sales. So uh, let me also add here, no, pwede kasing siyang solution to the problem. So dito ang context natin, uh, the solution to the problem, ha. Okay? So if you have that kind of solution, so ano yung mga pros niya? Okay, if this is your solution, it can provide lower cost, faster speed, increased customer satisfaction, fewer errors, and increased sales. On the other side, no, right factors and forces that prevent achievement of the ideal state. No, these are called the restraining forces or forces against or hindering forces. When considering businesses initiatives, example may also include here the implementation cost, the complexity, the time to roll out, lack of knowledge or skill, conflicting priorities, or past failure with similar initiatives. So this list is actually just a set of example, hindi to exhaustive. So if you have that kind of solution or what current situation needs to be changed or the current state, no, or the future state that we need that we are proposing, you should provide here the cons, I mean the cons to that that solution or the future state of the situation. Naintindihan? Okay? So kunwari, ang isang solution na nakikita natin to install and maintain uh, new accounting system, so lagay mo yung driving forces mo. No? Lagay mo yung driving forces, lagay mo yung restraining forces. So kunwari, ang nilagay nga natin, of course, if you have the driving forces of having a lower cost, kasi nga dahil gumagamit pa yung system, uh, isa sa mga benefit niya is to have a lower cost kasi nga instead of doing it manually, instead of doing it manually and having it done using system, baka it will really save us cost. Of course, one of the pros also is to have a faster speed. Okay? One also is to have fewer errors kasi since we are transitioning from manual systems into information system, no? Dahil walang human element, no? Magkakaroon tayo ng fewer errors. That is one of the pros. And possibly, the cons, no, of the solution that we stated na tayo mag-implement and mag-maintain ng new information system, it's possible the cons would be implementation cost, mahal yung pag-implement. Complexity, we all know that using new information system or mga sophisticated accounting information system is has this problem of complexity. We might as well put this cons, no? Possible time to roll out, matagal talaga mag-roll out. Then one is lack of knowledge and skill. So each of this item, you can put this as either a restraining force or a um driving forces. Okay? And after we identified here the driving forces and the restraining forces, we score each of the item. Okay? So score each factor based on the influence it exerts on the recommendation force of action and add up the scores for and against change. So for example, no, anong basis natin in giving scores based on its influence, no, or its the influence of that force to this solution or the future state of the situation. And after you provide score for each of the forces, no, you add all the scores, no, para masabi natin na ang ating solution is the optimal one or yung future state na ating nire-recommend is a good one, dapat yung total score of your driving forces is higher than the restraining forces. Naintindihan? Kasi rather, if you have a restraining forces na mataas siya kaysa sa driving forces, then it means to say that your solution to the problem or the future situation that you are proposing is not a good solution. Okay? It's possible that you have another alternative. Then you perform also a force field analysis. So, kung sino may pinakamataas na net score sa alternative or sa options na meron ka, that is the optimal solution. Naintindihan? So, again, the force field analysis is a good tool for you to really convince your audit client that your solution is the optimal one. Okay, so um, in here, no, balik tayo dito, no, your score can be using a 5-point Likert scale where 1 exerts the lowest influence and 5 represents the highest impact. The item can be prioritized through discussion, ranking, and multi-voting technique, and the result will show which side scores the highest. Okay, so brainstorming din yung pagbibigay natin ng score. Dapat may may consensus or may agreement among those people involved in identifying the driving forces and the restraining forces. Okay? And number 5, no, last, no, step, determine which strategy to employ. You can then decide whether or not to move forward with the change. If the decision is to proceed, the strategy could consist of strengthening the forces that support the change initiative or managing or diffusing the forces against change. So, kung talagang siya na yung optimal solution for that problem, no? Pagpalagay natin, yung net score niya is mataas ang driving forces, what you can do is to strategize. So, meaning to say, what steps can we do in order to strengthen or palawigin pa yung mga driving forces na na-identify natin. So, what are the controls that we can put? Parang ganun. So, what steps we shall take in order to realize or get the most the benefit of this driving force, parang ganon. And at the same time, we can mitigate or lessen the forces against the said change or the forces that we identified, para anong way para ma-weaken natin yung mga uh, forces against this change or the restraining factors or forces that we identified. Okay, so yan, that's the force field analysis. Okay? So, now we go to the pang-ilan na 'to? Pang-fifth na 'to, 'no? We now go to the sixth one, what we call the flow chart or the process flow map. I think you're all very familiar with the flow chart or the process flow map kasi, 'di ba, dumaan na kayo sa accounting information system and sa audit and assurance principle. Pero if ever medyo hindi pa kayo gano'n ka-confident, 'no, na magbasa ng flowchart, then it is now the good time for you to really have a good understanding of the flowchart kasi it's very important for the auditors for them to read the flowchart in understanding the process of the um, they are reviewing. Kasi possibly nagre-review sila ng business process, then better to understand it through the flowchart. Kung wala pang available na flowchart, it is now the task of the auditor to create the flowchart for future references. Kasi possibly, pwede siyang reviewin ng future auditors or possibly in the next year, gagawin ulit yung review na yun or yung audit na yun. Then you now have a documented process ng nire-review mong area. Okay? So in here, there are two commonly used methods for documenting process. These are your process maps and process narratives. So process maps are pictorial representation of inputs, steps, workflows, and outputs. They can be prepared at a high level, providing an overview of the process or at the detailed activity level. Process maps may include some accompanying narrative. So yung tinatawag nating process narrative. Okay? In here, no, your process flow map is also a flow chart. Pero I get this definition from the Wikipedia. It says here that the flow chart is a type of diagram that represents a workflow or a process. It can be classified into a high-level flow chart and a detailed flow chart. When we say a high-level flow chart, it depicts broad inputs, tasks, workflows, and outputs. A high-level flowchart helps reviewers understand the overall activities, systems, reports, and interfaces with the other process and sub-processes. So when you say high-level, in Tagalog, pwede kasing maraming mga systems na ginagamit on a certain process. So you use only, tawag dito, a limited process flow symbols, no, to depict the process being done for that particular function. Let's say for example, um, tawag dito yung sales activity natin, no? we all know that the CS activity covers a lot of departments, and ano yung pwede nating maging gamitin na flowchart, high level flowchart, meaning from the process order, no? Process order, sorry. Coming from the purchase requisition, 'di ba that's the starting point, no? Um, Maraming detailed process kasi yan, pero kung high level siya, your process, sorry, purchase requisition, no, after it is approved by the appropriate individual, no, or authorized by the appropriate individual, it will now be a purchase order. Purchase order now uh, will be, will be created or will be created by the sales department and will be forwarded to the supplier. So ganun lang siyang kasimple. And then the purchase order now approved by the teka, ang sinasabi ko pala purchase, no? Sorry, nalito ako. So ano pala tayo, purchase function tayo, no? So from the purchase requisition, may nag-request and then in-approve ng appropriate authority or ng individual, and then naging purchase order, we will now forward to the supplier. The supplier will now uh, um, kung may available na stocks, then they will give a feedback that uh, you can now we can now process your order. Hanggang sa yung ano, yung purchase order mo i-forward ng tawag dito ng the appropriate department to the appropriate department, such as the what you call this one, the warehouse, no? Or the receiving department, the accounting department, mga tipong ganun. So parang high level lang talaga siya. So kung detailed flowchart naman siya, ano naman siya? A detailed flowchart documents the more specific inputs, tasks, action systems, decisions, and output. In addition to providing a more detailed depiction of the process flow, detailed flowcharts provide additional information that enhances the understanding of the process. There may be situations in which the internal auditor believes it is more appropriate to document the understanding of the process using narrative memoranda instead of flowchart. Lalo na kung medyo simple lang naman yung ating process, pwede naman gumamit ng narrative memoranda. Pero kung siya ay a process or a function na maraming involved na outputs, inputs, documents, or systems, or like database, no, yung ibang mga elements, no, magandang gumamit na ng flowchart. Okay? So ano itsura ng ating flowchart? Eto siya. Okay, so remember nyo ba tong flowchart na to? So these are your ito, no? Flowchart showing all facts translated into visual symbols. So, actually, it comes from your accounting information system na book, no? Kinuha ko siya. Dito, ang ano natin is that we are depicting the sales function. So, from the sales department, the customer, this is the starting point. They receive the customer order and they input the order to the computer operations department. So we are using here information system, right? And then we have here a computer operations wherein we edit and we shall do credit check. So based from the credit history file of the customer, no, titignan niya kung pasok pa yung order niya, kung pwede, kung may natira pa bang credit amount na pwedeng ipa-extend doon sa customer. If not, no, then definitely magiging ano yan, canceled customer order, or pwedeng maging ano yan, open customer order. Okay? Yun yung very detailed pa. Now, if okay siya, ibig sabihin pasok pa yung sales order ng customer, then it will now be a sales order which will now be creating the system will create different copies of sales order, and there will be an information to be stored in the AR file and the inventory database. Okay, then 2 copies of the sales order, ito on page connector to, will be forwarded to the shipping department, and another copy will be given to the warehouse. Okay, and then ito yung customer order na nanggaling kay sales department will now be stored as a file, no? And then for the warehouse, the sales order that come from the computer operations department or the information system, they will now pick the goods from the warehouse, and then together with the sales order, they will now update the stock records in the stock record database. And the sales order, together with the goods, no, will be forwarded to the shipping department. Now, the two copies of the sales order coming from the information system will be, what do you call this one? Match, no? Ibig sabihin, titingnan nila ng shipping department kung yung sales order coming from the warehouse and the actual goods na finorward sa kanila matches with the two copies forward to them by the information system. And if they are matched, they will now ship the goods. Okay? And then in here, the one copy of the sales order, no, will be forwarded to the customer together with the goods. And now the two copies of the sales order will now be stored in file in the shipping department. Okay, so dapat ganun kayo magbasa ng ano ha, ng flowchart. So dapat as much as possible, no, kung medyo hirap kayong basahin yung flowchart, you know, you can browse the Google. So, kumbaga, it will help you to check what are the representation of these symbols. Okay? Naintindihan? Okay, so in here we have a flow charting value adding checklist. So for you to um tawag dito to draw the hindi naman optimal, the good representation of the process using flowchart, dapat yes yung sagot mo sa mga questions na 'to, 'no? And we have listed here 9 questions. Are the tasks necessary? What can be reduced or eliminated? Okay? Are activities in conflicts with others? Can anything be simplified? Are all handoffs necessary? Can the sequence be changed? No? Are all checks, approvals, and decisions necessary? Are there loops or incompatible duties in the process? And lastly, are there dead ends anywhere? So, possibly naman talaga na document mo yung flowchart. However, through the flowchart that you created, may mga nakita kang ang answer dito no, that can be a possible recommendation you can provide your audit client. No, ano yung pwede pang improve? Baka kasi may mga task na hindi na necessary. Baka kasi may mga process na dalawa na yung gumagawa. I mean to say, parang yung system ginagawa na rin niya, then may manual checking pa. Are the tasks really necessary? So baka pwedeng tanggalin yung isa. Most likely matatanggal yung manual process. So what can be reduced or eliminated? So baka may way for us to, kunwari yung process medyo mahaba, baka may mga process din na hindi na rin necessary. We can reduce that process. So that is in connection also with the question number 1. No? Hindi siya answerable by yes or no. Okay? The next question, are activities in conflict with others? So kunwari, ano ba yung pwede nating example dito? Baka kasi may activity ka na parang you are performing authority limits, tapos yung isang check na ginagawa is reconciliation process, no? May isang nagche-check, no? And then may isang tawag dito, may isang gumagawa rin ng parang um, process na reconciliation din. Let's say for example, paano ko ba i-ano 'to, i-explain sa inyo? Kunwari with the hmm, well, paano ko ba explain 'to? Parang nahang ako dito, ah. Ah, ayun. Kunwari yung dalawang department 'no, involved sila sa isang function. And then, yung three-way matching of documents, baka mamaya, better na si shipping talaga yung mag-check ng, sales order 'no, yung pag-match niya ng sales order na na-receive niya kay information system and yung kanyang nakatanggap na sales order together with the goods from the warehouse. Pero, si accounting function ginagawa niya rin for recording. Baka mamaya kasi, hindi naman talaga si accounting function yung gumawa ng three-way matching na yon. Baka kasi enough na yung parang, mga naka-attach na document basta present yung tatlo, okay na yun for recording. Baka kasi mamaya kailangan pa ng go signal ni accounting before talaga ma-deliver yung goods na yon. Naintindihan niyo ba ako? So meaning to say, kailangan ng dalawang, three-way matching na dapat si accounting ma-check na rin yung three-way matching na yun, and together with the shipping sila rin mag three-way matching. Baka kailangan din ng go signal from the accounting para ma-ship yung document. Meaning to say baka hindi na talaga necessary na si accounting function, siya rin yung may gano'ng, um paggawa ng process na manggagaling rin yung signal sa kanila. Baka puwede na nating tanggalin yon. Kasi enough na si shipping basta may natanggap siyang sales order from the information system and the sales order coming from the shipping department, warehouse department with the goods is, would warrant the case na puwede talaga silang mag-ship na ng goods. Si accounting just merely the recording only, but not also the verifier of the said situation. Kasi may mga gano'n minsan, eh. Laging hinihintay yung go signal ni accounting before mag-go yung process. Enough na kung sino yung process owner of that activity, okay na siya na, ah, as the authorized, department or individual to go or to have a go signal with the said transaction. Naintindihan? Sana naintindihan niyo ako 'no? So, eto, can anything be simplified? Tulad nung sa number 2, 'no, kung meron naman tayong puwedeng i-reduce, mas simplify 'no, kung medyo complex yung transaction pero, instead of having, 3 documents involved, baka enough na yung 2 documents involved, then we can simplify might as well the process, okay? So, are all handoffs necessary? So, meaning parang katulad din sa discussion ko kanina, yung kailangan pa ng go signal ni accounting, baka mamaya hindi naman necessaryong handoff na yon from their end to go with the signal. Baka puwedeng si shipping department na yung magkaroon ng go signal to ship the goods together with the sales order. Okay? And then the next, can the sequence be changed? Baka kasi mamaya 'no, hindi siya, yung sequence na hindi logical 'no. For example, ganito, baka mamaya kasi, meron tayong kunwari, ang puwede nating example dito, eto, before we can serve the order to the customer, um, tawag dito, dapat dumaan siya sa credit check, dapat, tinignan kung merong stock record. Baka ang naunang process is that kung merong customer order, as long as merong tayong stock available, tapos, before the credit check, dineliver agad yung goods sa shipping department, that is not a good sequence. Okay? So better before we can, provide or forward the goods coming from the warehouse to the shipping, might as well check muna yung credit history. So, through that, may sequence talaga. Okay? Kasi baka mamaya nauna agad yung pag-forward ng, goods before ma-check yung credit, it's not really a good sequence. It's not a logical sequence. Naintindihan? Okay, so might as well check kung logical yung kanyang sequence. Okay? So next question, are all checks, approval, and decisions necessary? So katulad sabi ko kanina, balik tayo dun sa accounting and kay shipping. Baka hindi naman necessary yung approval or yung verification ni accounting doon kay shipping before they can, ship the documents really. Okay? So gano'n siyang, yun yung best way possible na puwede ko siyang ma-explain sa inyo. Okay? So, second to the last question, are there loops or incompatible duties in the process? So babalik tayo dun kay accounting. Tama ba na siya yung verifier, another level of, authority before the goods can be shipped to the customer? Baka incompatible duty na siya, hindi siya authorized to do really the transaction. Naintindihan? Kasi si shipping department na yung, puwedeng mag-go signal once na meron talagang, approved sales order coming from the information system together with the goods na nanggaling kay warehouse, okay? Then lastly, are there dead ends anywhere? Baka kasi mamaya yung for example, dito sa process natin, sorry, baka kulang 'to. Remember that, we should have a record on file. Baka kasi mamaya wala tayong customer order na ni-record on file, then that is a dead end. So saan napunta yung customer order? So diretso lang siya kay information system, okey? So nasaan siya dito? Dapat makikita mo saan siya ni-record on file. As much as possible, lahat ng, process or transactions merong trail. So kaya importante na dapat lahat ng process or lahat ng documents meron niyang pupuntahan or meron niyang, tawag dun, ah, hindi naman dead end, pero meron niyang, pupuntahan kung saan siya dapat mapunta. Okay, naintindihan? So sana naintindihan niyo yung pag-explain ko dito nung flow charting value adding checklist. Kasi aside from doing flow chart, through the flow chart that you created or made, if you have answers to this question na may mga no or parang kulang, then that is a room for improvement that you can recommend to the audit client. Naintindihan? Okay, so hopefully naintindihan niyo ako and sana natandaan niyo 'to 'no. So